Hi, I'm Stephanie Valinsky, Deputy Director at the Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Professionalism. Welcome to Reimagining Law. We're exploring how the legal profession is adapting the delivery of legal services to meet the needs of today's consumers. I'm joined today by Jarrod Reich, professor at the University of Miami Law School. Jarrod, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie. It's my pleasure.
So, well-being has been a part of the discussion in the legal profession for the last few years. And some people have argued it's good for business without much detail explaining why that is. But you really have kind of taken, the data and looked at it to talk about why there is a business case for well-being. And so why did you feel this was important to do?
Well, I think for the reasons you stated, going back at least 30 years or so, as far as I can recall, there are a raft of articles, both scholarly pieces as well as bar journal type articles that talk about the need to promote well-being in the profession, the high incidence of mental distress and substance use disorders, as well as just general lawyer dissatisfaction and unhappiness. And the articles tended to talk about the problem, and any solutions that they came up with were more about, or were more based on this moral or ethical imperative to just do good by lawyers. And having practiced law for so long and before teaching and knowing that the profession is a business, that I believe that change would not come unless the firms recognize that there was, or that there is, rather, a financial interest in promoting well-being. Because after all, profits have skyrocketed over the years, notwithstanding the widespread prevalence of lawyer distress. So what my article intended to do was try to explain why firms should look beyond the snapshot profit and loss statements and see that for long-term sustained financial growth, promoting and prioritizing the well-being of their lawyers and other staff would be to their economic benefit.
Excellent. So for those who are watching that haven't read the law review article, can you, kind of summarize the three main points you articulate in the article?
Sure. So the article essentially makes three arguments as to why, or as to how, promoting and prioritizing lawyer well-being will help to improve firms' long-term financial stability and growth. The first is, in addition to defraying costs, there are obviously costs associated with healthcare costs, as well as inefficient work, the cost of extended absenteeism, as well as presenteeism, which is less than efficient work, or the lack of presence while one is engaging in work-related tasks. So the three financial benefits, in addition to avoiding some of those costs, are threefold. First is the research demonstrates in other industries that promoting employee wellness increases employee performance. And so lawyers will be more productive and more efficient if they are well. And as clients now are moving towards a model that seeks efficiency in the work that the lawyers do, as well as moving away from the billable hour model and alternative fee arrangements, the emphasis on both streamlined and efficient work will be important. So it will help the performance of the lawyers. Second is it will improve retention. As I'm sure you're well aware, and your viewers are well aware, law firms and even smaller shops and organizations tend to be a revolving door. I believe a recent NALP study said that something like 2/3 or so of lawyers intend to leave their current employment within 3 to 5 years. And I've seen studies that suggest that it costs as much as 1.5 to 2 times a lawyer's salary to replace them, in addition to losing some of the intangible costs of building client relationships and institutional knowledge of matters and just the firm working environment. So it will help to retain the lawyers who tend to leave the job due to mental and emotional health issues. And finally, it will help with recruitment, particularly with the younger millennial and older Generation Z folks who are now entering the profession, entering law school. We see that those generations tend to prioritize and are very open about talking about mental health and substance abuse issues. And in fact, the American Lawyer did a summer associate survey in 2019, so the last real summer class of associates, and the number one driver of deciding whether or not to take a firm's offer was work-life balance, more than salary, more than AmLaw rankings, and more than any other driver that maybe older generations tend to prioritize. And anecdotally, as a professor who deals with law students regularly and helps them make employment decisions, I can tell you that a lot of my students who are now going into summer associate positions or junior associate positions after graduating are looking into the types of measures the firms are taking to promote work-life balance and to promote lawyer well-being.
Oh, excellent. Do you think that the older generation, whether it be baby boomers or Gen Xers like myself, the idea of, millennials, the kind of the stereotype of, right, they don't want to work hard, et cetera. Do you think some of that is kind of lessening and people are beginning to accept that this really is a requirement for people's work life?
I think so. I think every generation feels that the generation that comes after them are soft and lazy. I've certainly heard that about my generation, which depending on which study you look at, I'm, one or the other. But, I've heard that, and I've heard even junior lawyers talking about summer associates being, lazy and not wanting to work. So that will always happen. But what I think is happening is the national conversation and even international conversation on mental health and substance use and substance abuse issues are becoming more mainstream. While there still is a stigma, I think the stigma has lessened somewhat, especially now that we see athletes and celebrities and politicians openly talk about struggles with mental health and substance abuse issues. So I think that people are realizing that this is a real problem and that this isn't about people wanting to work 3 hours a day and have 8 months paid vacation. The studies have shown that to the extent you can quantify this, millennial and Generation Z folks do want to work hard and do tend to work hard. It's just a question of they want to work hard in a way that is both meaningful to them and also allows them to live a life beyond their work.
Right. Hard and efficient, maybe more so.
Exactly.
Right. In terms of, kind of the business case for well-being, what would you say to our viewers are, two practical things that, people can start doing now to develop, kind of a business case for well-being at their firms, whether it might be a big firm, medium size, all the way down to solos?
Sure. So I don't think that there is one right answer. A lot of the work that firms are doing now tend to be what I call a la carte measures to improve well-being. So the workload remains the same, the expectations remain the same, but they will make available on-site yoga classes. Some firms have on-site therapists come, once a month, or have offer discounted gym memberships or other types of health benefits like that, or they may have some sort of speaker series come and talk about well-being. What I think really does need to happen in order for this to take hold is for there to be systemic changes. So for the larger firms, I think some things that they could do that aren't necessarily going to show up in their PR materials and their marketing materials that will help promote well-being would be to really have an effective management strategy in how to run the firm. And what I mean by that is making clear expectations on workload and also giving junior associates and junior lawyers the opportunity to do meaningful work and also learn from the more senior lawyers so that they're getting training as well as becoming a meaningful member of the practice. Because one of the big drivers of, or two of the big drivers of the exacerbation of these mental distress are the long hours and the feeling of meaninglessness of the work, the lack of autonomy and control that people have, the lack of connectedness to others and their clients and the broader legal community, and the feeling of competence. So I think kind of rethinking how law firms are run to think about how to manage them in a way that treats their lawyers as stakeholders, not just their equity partners, I think will go a long way. As far as smaller firms and solo practitioners, I do think that rethinking the business model can be helpful on a smaller scale. And what I mean by that is a lot of the issues that are talked about when we talk about lawyer well-being tend to focus on big law. But I think a lot of the issues are still there, even in solo practice, solo shops. And I think one thing that particularly solo lawyers can do is really think about the limits of the work that they can and should take on at any one time. And one of the things that I like to tell my students who get overly stressed about law school, and I won't go into too many details not to re-traumatize your listeners of their first year experience, is really, unless you're doing death penalty appeals, nothing you do as a practitioner is a life or death matter. Mm-hmm. Yet we treat even the smallest discovery dispute as something that requires around-the-clock emergency coverage. And I think that if people are able to let's say, limit the number of hours they're working or the number of meaningful hours they're working, and to have meaningful time away from their work, away from their office, and not working for the sake of working, I think that will go a long way as well.
Well, thank you, Jarrod, for really adding to this conversation of well-being in the legal profession, and also, advancing it. And so I hope your positivity towards some of this will play out, and hopefully the advocacy will continue. So thank you so much, Jarrod, for joining me. Please go ahead and like and share this video and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on new episodes. Information on how to stay connected both with the commission and Jarrod and his work is in the notes. Thank you so much for watching, and stay well, everyone.